Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, or whatever time zone it is, wherever you're in the world, it is your Lord and Saviour. And today, we are going to be talking about my thoughts and opinions on the Werewolf the Apocalypse Purgatory demo. And if you have no idea what that game is all about, you can check out my reaction to the announcement trailer, which is going to appear in a card right there, which is, got me very excited indeed. Now, I did have some concerns going into this, and unfortunately, I do still have said concerns, or rather, very similar and also brand new concerns. But let's talk about the positive things first, shall we? Hi, post-lore here. As you can see, I've changed my attire just to make this bit stand out a bit more. Having just recorded my entire thought processes of the review, I failed to mention that this is going to contain a fuck ton of spoilers. As we're talking about the entire demo in its full, I wanted to give you some heads up in case you wanted to experience this for yourself, or check out the playthrough I did of it, which will be going live on my YouTube channel tomorrow on the 29th of May 2024 in the year of our Lord Talos, for you to experience it that way, just in case you can't for whatever reason, or you're just curious to see what I did with it. I'm also going to be giving out a content warning for transphobia. Yeah, Different Tales goes down that route here. I wanted to give you a heads up on that, just in case that's something you didn't want to deal with right now, for one reason or another, and quite frankly, your mental health is far more important than this video getting views, so take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time, whenever that may well be. But if you are staying around, let's crack on with the fucking review thing. Overall, I really do like this demo, and I'm very excited about the game that we're going to be getting. But of course, nothing is perfect, and I do have my quarrels with it. But to start with the positives, as I said in the reaction thing, the demo for Purgatory, and obviously the game as a whole, it looks and feels pretty much identical to Heart of the Forest, even to the extent where the bit of ambience music that plays in between chapters is exactly the same, and some of like the audio cues are similar as well, which I kind of like because it's got like a same running motif through it. But there's also obviously a lot of new things with it as well. As I'm talking about the music, let's start with that. The music is not as, I guess, new agey ambience as Heart of the Forest was. Sure, they had its more intense moments, but it's still very synth based. It's still very like pad and ambience based, and as like your rage and other stats like ebb and flow, and as the action like comes and goes, the music picks up in pace, and there's a lot more eerie, a lot more, I want to say mechanical, but that's not quite the right word for it, because I say mechanical in a soundtrack setting, it gets the impression it's like a Silent Hill sort of affair, but it's a lot more urban, it's a lot more in your face and eerie, and almost a bit overwhelming, which is kind of fitting for a Garou, a werewolf, within an urban environment, because they're very much at home within the forest and the wilderness, and Samara, our protagonist here, the demo focuses on Samara in Warsaw, in Poland. It's got the same setting and everything as Heart of the Forest did, but whereas that was very much focused in the wilderness and the Puszka, the primordial forest, this is very much focused in like this city centre. There's a bit at the beginning where you're like trying to get into Poland, where the music is very tense and there's a bit more wilderness. I have to say there's a bit of a real cheesy bit at the beginning where you're introduced to Samira and she's from Afghanistan, so you have to have that ethnic sounding vocal bit and like some like Asian sort of like stringed instruments as well. Basically sort of a Hollywood sort of affair, which I find a bit annoying. I was kind of waiting for the piss yellow filter to go over the top of it, to be honest, but I'm very glad that it didn't. It's, you know, just a little bit of a letdown there. And one of the things that really pulled me into it straight away was the music that plays when you enter the main menu. It's quite peaceful, but it's very loud. It comes and goes. It can't quite decide where the tonality is, whether it's like threatening or it's peaceful, which is kind of fitting for the werewolf in the urban environment, as I said, and also for somebody of Samira's predicament. She is a refugee from Poland, you know, wanting to make a home and a place to stay within Poland, and I will touch upon the reasons for that in a moment. The art style for Purgatory is pretty similar to Heart of the Forest, but there are some very notable differences that create a very different impression. Whereas Heart of the Forest had like these explosions of greens and reds and blues and like these wild unfiltered colours to depict like the Puszka in like their full primordial form, like untampered by the hand of man. Here we have like with Purgatory like muted browns and reds and like more unnatural colours like purple for like graffiti art and whatnot. You know, it really creates a much more different take on the Garou's perspective on the city life, how it's like kind of grubby and dirty and grimy, which basically describes most cities in the world. But it's interesting how it depicts the senses of the Garou with the different colour palettes, whereas in Heart of the Forest it's very loud and bright, and it's almost overwhelming for Maya, our Garou in that game, who's like coming to her senses since her coming of age story, and she's experiencing her first change. Samira, on the other hand, has already experienced her first change. Like, she is a Garou, and you do have a choice of being which Garou that you're going to be. You also have a choice of auspice, whereas unlike Heart of the Forest, your actions depicted your auspice. Here it's very much cut and dry. These are your auspices that you can choose. Here are your tribes, and the tribes that are available to you, at least in the demo. This may change to the full game, although I'd find that quite unlikely at this point. The Bone Gnawers, the Black Furies, the Glass Walkers, the Shadow Lords, and the Silver Fangs. Now, each auspice and tribe give you a gift, the supernatural powers of the Garou, just the one, and their descriptions say that they can only be used once, not like once per chapter, but once. I don't know if that's a typo or whether they literally do mean like once per playthrough. I really hope that's not the case, because that's just a bit unusual to me. Unless the whole game goes through like 1 or 2 days and there's a process to recovering that back, which I'd find quite unlikely, but it's a bit weird to me. But as this is a demo, things may well change, but I do have my doubts there, but we'll just have to see what the future has in store for us. Now, with a much more awareness of tribes, the auspices and similar things like that, we also have a more focus on the different packs and the sept that in which they fall under within Warsaw. We have an urban Caern, which I have mixed feelings about. On the one hand, it's pretty cool that we have an urban one, because most of them are very nature-based. In first edition Werewolf, in fact, there is a Caern based in Central Park in New York, which is sort of a blend between the two. But I also feel it's a bit unusual that we do have such the focus on the urban Caern. But again, as we're focusing on Samira, who's very much in the city and trying to find her place, not just within her own pack, which I'll get onto in just a moment, but also as an individual who's living within Poland, it makes sense that they would have a more of an urban focus there. You know, it makes sense, but at the same time, it doesn't mean I have to like all of it. Now, the pack thing is an unusual thing, because you're told who your pack leader is, and you have a pack patron, or in older games could be known as totems. Now, interestingly enough, pack patrons, or totems, are not a thing within Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition, or at least not as much as they are in older editions, because Heart of the Forest, the previous game by Different Tales, were writing that game from the 20th anniversary edition standpoint that was meant to transition into a completely different iteration of the 5th edition of the TTRPG, whereas the 5th edition that we have now does away with a lot of those things. It's like a restarting on the universe, and sort of the writing implies that it's not quite too sure where it sits within the timeline, because you have like these pack patrons that have like different names and whatnot, and they have probably will have a different effect on how you interact with certain elements of the world as we get on to that in the full game, probably. But yeah, it's just a bit unusual that. So it appeals to older fans, I guess, who like those elements, but it doesn't do much in terms of the 5th edition's consistency. I like the fact that we now have a more focused Garou that's like able to focus a bit more on the pack structures and the sept leads, and a bit more the politics, which I feel can be forgotten in grander conversations regarding Werewolf the Apocalypse. You talk with various individuals within a Garou pub or bar. I can't remember how it calls it, called the Apokalipska, or however it's written in Polish. I'm assuming it's whatever the Polish word for apocalypse is, which is a bit on the nose. Not that the average individual would know about that, but you know, it was just a bit. I think they could have done a bit better with that choice of name, and also a Garou pub for Garou was a very interesting choice. This is somewhere that Samira works, and you talk to different NPCs. Your pack leader, a woman called Victoria, who is British, and you also talk to a woman called Pat, who I believe is very much a character from Heart of the Forest. I'm a bit hazy with some of the character names, it's been a while since I've played it, but Heart of the Forest does not waste any time throwing you some of those older characters. Like, within minutes you meet Maya from the previous game, who's in a pack with Daniel, the Red Talon, I believe the Child of Guy individual's there, and then there's another Garou that's there. And it's very interesting that canonically that's the pack that Maya chose to be with. I thought that was a pretty neat thing, and I'm quite curious to see how that expands within the full game, because you, as with the previous game, you have like a loyalty sort of meter within your character sheet. You can open that up and have a look to see which character likes you, doesn't like you, so on and so forth. But unlike Heart of the Forest, there's a little number that goes with it as well, so you can see easily what the number means. Like, a positive number means, obviously, that it's working up towards the liking scale, and there's a negative number as well. The more you piss them off, the higher those negative numbers increase as well. And there are some differences regarding to certain interactions your character make. If you remember from the trailer, you were able to choose different skills and have focuses on your like mental, social and physical. What that basically comes down to is that you choose a physical, social and mental skill, and then depending on what happens in the game, those can come up at dramatically appropriate moments. For example, my version of Samira would later become a bone gnawer under the auspice of Ragabash, a bone gnawer Ragabash. And these all are not presented all at once, like this is scattered throughout the course of the demo. Like choosing your tribe is one of the last things that you choose. The auspice comes a bit before, but right at the beginning there's the different skills. And my physical skill, I chose to be stealthy because it made sense in the given moment when you're trying to get into opponent. That would be like a primary focus, I guess. And Ragabash came about through this decision of being a bit sneaky and trickster-like, I guess. And being a sneaky person, I had like a stealth option to come to sneak about, trying to get through, now which turned out to have very little influence, but it was cool that I could have that option there. And there was a bit more of that customization and a bit more connection to the TTRPG a bit later on, because I chose the occult mental skill, which is like an understanding of the supernatural rather than doing like black magic necromancy stuff. For those of you who are coming in with this who have no idea what the TTRPG is like, I was handed a package, which I won't say what it is because I do want there to be some surprises for you. I was able to expect the box. I wasn't able to do much with it. I think it followed after a stat of mine where I had like no or few dots in, or too few dots to like properly analyze. So maybe if they were a bit higher, I'd been able to work out what was going on or feel something. Maybe if my character was a Theurge rather than Ragabash, I'd have a bit more connection to the spiritual elements of it. But, you know, I'll just have to do another playthrough to find out. Or if you've done that already, do let me know in the comments below. And that also leads us on to some of the more familiar aspects in the previous game regarding rage, willpower, health, and, of course, the new stat, Hirano. If you've played Heart of the Forest, you know what most of these do in-game, and like willpower, you won't be able to do certain stuff if that's too low, and having to push yourself through certain actions require you to spend a point of willpower. Health is obviously your health. You take damage or you incur some form of physical strain, you're going to lose your health points. And rage fluctuates depending on certain interactions, things that piss you off, but also when you shape shift into your supernatural forms, which I found interesting because it goes to how they interpreted they being different tales rather than what any of the core books describe, which is a choice I guess makes sense in the setting, but for consistency with the 5th edition of the TTRPG, it's a little inconsistent. Similar comments can be passed about how Hirano works. Now, if you remember from what I described in the reaction trailer, Hirano is like a werewolf depression, and all of these are described in games. You can hover over the word that are in orange, and like this one is, and it will tell you what it means and how it works, but just to tell you what it is here, Hirano is like a werewolf depression. They are children of Gaia, Mother Earth, who are like sworn to fight the worm, one of the triads, like entropy incarnate sort of thing. In the 5th edition setting, we are going through the apocalypse, not like the world is spitting up hellfire, or it's like an apocalyptic setting, but more like Mother Earth is dying or being killed. And the Garou that may come upon to realise this, like, just have this great sense of dread, like, we are these warriors, these champions, these guardians, these paladins, and what's it all worth, really, in the end? But it works a bit differently with 5th edition, how it's connected to mortal and wolf touchstones. You lose one of them through death or they're injured. This Hirano meeting goes up in the TTRPG. That reaches to its level of 5. You are no longer a playable character and have to hand over your sheet to a NPC that you're out of action, which is a very interesting choice that the developers chose there. But in Purgatory, the way that works is that when it reaches a certain number, I believe it's like 3 and higher, you can't shift into some of your supernatural forms. It also depicts certain comments and how you pass judgment on things. I won't say how the Hirano plays into this, but it's a lot more personal to them rather than a grander nature of things. So similar to the 5th edition setting, but it's conveyed a lot better. And my knee-jerk reaction to Hirano being assigned to one of the supernatural forms was a bit odd, but with a bit of thought, as somebody who is depressed themselves, who goes through depression and depressive phases, it takes a lot of physical willpower and gusto to do anything when you're really trapped within oneself. And given the physical nature of shape-shifting and how, as depicted in Purgatory and Heart of the Forest, it's a very physical, very painful experience. In all versions of Werewolf the Apocalypse, turning into a werewolf isn't just a puff of smoke and you appear. It's a very physical, visceral transformation, and it comments on the twisting and the snapping of sinew and whatnot. It's beautifully written. But how Hirano is depicted here is a very realistic depiction of depression in that sense. What's the point of how can you muster yourself to do these things and don't have the mental and spiritual energy to push yourself to do these things? And I imagine that'll bite you on the arse narratively in appropriate moments, which I kind of like being able to sleep on it and think about it a bit more, which kind of leads me on to what I don't like. And there's a few things. First of all, when I played the game, the ending didn't play properly. It bugged out. What was supposed to happen, I reached to the end of the demo, it says end or the end, and then it takes me to the screen that says thank you for playing the game, there's still many decisions that you have to make, and then it encourages you to add the game to your wish list. And I don't know whether it's because I did that or because when I downloaded the demo I had to have a sneak peek of what the main menu looked like before I started my work on the podcast, and I just marveled at the music and already exited it out and already saw that screen. I don't know whether that fucked up with the game's code, but that was a bit irritating when I played it, and I just was sitting there for ages and going back and into saying why isn't this continuing forward. I had to ask a friend who I knew had played this, who explained to me what happened. So I'm glad that I didn't miss anything, but it was still very annoying that had happened. There are also some 5th edition isms that I don't like, which is primarily how they handle the rights, which the way that this game, and to an extent 5th edition treats it, not so much there, but it's more so within this game, rights are treated as hocus pocus spirit manipulation magic that doesn't really have any weight to it, which is a bit baffling given how the importance of treating spirits and the spirit world respect Heart of the Forest had, and the couple times that spirits are mentioned here, it's just a bit, we use spirits to do X, Y, and Z, which is kind of how it's treated within 5th edition. It does try and get players to encourage them to partake in a ritual rite sort of thing, but it feels a bit forced there, and it doesn't even have that here. So I'm a bit disappointed that the folks at Different Tales, who I know have experience with Werewolf the Apocalypse because of their extensive developer vlogs for Heart of the Forest, it's a bit disappointing that was treated so flippantly. I'm also a bit upset that it seems that the Black Furies, as I feared, as use an example in my reaction thing, it's a lot more general, that they don't have the pseudo-narrative that they had in Heart of the Forest, that it's they've doubled down on the 5th edition stuff, which of course makes sense, and this is purely a subjective thing here. It would just be nice if there was just, they had a bit more of a liberty with that and not just bow down to that so much, I guess. But as I said, that's purely a subjective thing here and not one I wish to harbour on too much. However, there are two things about this that I feel rather concerned about. The first of which is that, as somebody on the comment section of my reaction thing and also in my Discord server highlighted, or at least they were very wary of, it seems to me that they're going to hint or lead towards the Polish-Belarus crisis to be something that's being manipulated by the worm. Yes, there's the worm in all things, and yes, you could argue to an extent that anything bad that happens has a stronger influence of the worm, but the way it was described here is the worm is going to be having a much stronger influence on the people and all the shit that's happening. I really hope that's not the case, and I hope that's just a throwaway comment that this particular character had made to describe it to somebody else, because it would make sense that some people might have that understanding of things, not understanding the worm and the politics and whatnot. I'm trying to be optimistic here, but at the same time I can't help but feel a bit concerned that this may go down a particularly painful route. And the second one I find a bit baffling. Now, you may remember from my reaction trailer, I was concerned that they are going to use the Geta Fenris as the fascist tribe I've described all of that in the reaction trailer, and I'm sure you can find any post online that talks about this as well. And they're not doing that here yet, but they are treating... Obviously, you have a character who is a minority, who is a refugee, so these tensions and racism is going to be a theme here, which I don't have a problem with in of itself, but the way it's been handled so far I think is a bit crass. So to give you the context, when you are meeting a certain character who is transgender, they are the sept leader, so they are big boss cheese and they deserve some respect, and you can challenge that authority. And in older editions of Werewolf, pre-5th edition, there are systems in place where you can challenge your leader. There's certain times when you can do that. You cannot challenge a leader through time of war, for example. It's all part of the litany, which is also something that's mentioned in the 5th edition setting as well, because the litany has a different write-up there. So whatever your feelings on them and your own personal politics, you should treat your sept leader with some degree of respect. And you meet the sept leader, as I said, they're transgender. I believe it's a character that was in Heart of the Forest. There's a trans individual in that, and they've just, over the last few years, they've ascended the ranks, as it were. And you meet a guy called, I believe his name is Andres. I'm going to call him Andre, because that's going to be easier on my English tongue. Sorry. And he comes in talking about this problem, because the main hook of this, that somebody has died. A Garou has been killed. Some people believe it's to do with Bane spirits. And of course, Andre believes it's to do with refugees who have come in here. And he comes in and he dead names the sept leader. And it's not even a subtle forgot. It's a very deliberate intention. And if you don't know what that is, dead naming somebody is that you refer a trans or non-binary person by the name in which they were born, rather than the name that they wish to be known as now. And I was a bit startled by that. Not because... I mean, I was offended by it, but it just seemed very bizarre that happened, as this Andre is like a pack leader, a pack not attached to your own. But there was no consequence for that. Like, you, at the very least, you would have been fucking throated, by which I mean, like... like... cut the head off sort of thing, or like not the other sort of throated, I'm sure some of you are thinking, but there would have been some punishment for that. In 5th edition as well, there are rites that you can do to like take somebody down a peg, and in older edition as well, there are several rites where you can put somebody in their place and ostracize them for this behaviour. But there was no challenging of that. And I was a bit surprised that did not happen at all, or at the very least the sept leader made a passing comment on that. That's just so bizarre to me. I'm presuming that this is set up for you, the player, to do something about this in due course, but come on, guys, like, again, there's a bit of consistency here, and just a bit, like, have this sept leader who's very much strong within themselves. Like, come on. Which also leads on to the second point about how this character is portrayed. Now, the game highlights that he's got blonde hair. Samira describes the fact that he's got pretty blue eyes, and his artwork depicts that he's white. So he's very the stereotypical Nazi, depiction of what they choose to be the true master race sort of thing, which it's a bit crassly written and presented. And obviously this is setting up to be like the Geta Fenris, I guess, stereotypical Geta Fenris adjacent. The Sky's a Shadow Lord, by the way, so a completely separate tribe. And for the record, I don't think there is any problem depicting characters like this and having them in media, because it's important to challenge these, like, ideologies and these fascist ways of thinking. Poland, unfortunately, like a lot of places in the world, is a very unsafe place for LGBTQ people, and it's a very racist place as well. And I'm saying this from somebody from the UK, where it's also progressively not so safe for LGBTQ people and trans people, and it's very racist, and you could argue that a lot of that racism across the world is because of the racism in the UK. So I'm not trying to like have a moral high ground here or like shit on Poland. I'm just, wanting to, state the fact, as it were. And having characters like that and discussions and things like that in media are not inherently bad things, because if you don't have them or you don't address them, you're essentially lying through omission, and you're also censoring them, which in a sense perpetuates that these things are okay and they shouldn't be challenged. So I respect the authors, the developers of Different Tales, for wanting to have that conversation, but the way that it's delivered here is so crass, and with next to no punishment from the fucking sept leader to a pack leader, which would imply that on a ranking level, if we use old edition of Fiends, pack leader is going to be much lower than like the sept leader. We can say that sept leader is like a 4 and pack leader is like 1, maybe 2 at a push. Come on, like, have some consequence to the action there, like. And also Samira plays a bit fucking dumb here. She knows that the sept leader is a trans person. They are the partner to the person who they're staying with. So when the pack leader, like, dead names them, and Samira just has this moment of think, oh, who's such and such? Like, come on, you can put two and two together. You've demonstrated you're quite a smart individual and you're very aware, and you know, you're very streetwear and whatnot. Come on, let's just imply some brain cells and do some good writing. And even if it's just like a line that just glares at them or something like that, or like a warning has been given. But nah, just let's just brush over that. Let's not challenge that. Let's not say that here and there that it's now. Let's wait for the challenges to happen and let the players work out for themselves, which on the one hand is a good thing, but some people may not make that connection. They may feel a bit uncomfortable, but it would be nice if the sept leader just fucking challenged that they have been dead named on the spot. It's just frustrating. There's also, you know, to step away from the more heavier themes, they also treat this werewolf supernatural forms a bit weird here too. Like, there's a moment in my playthrough where I changed into Glabro. I always get Glabro and Hispo mixed up. Glabro is like the near wolf form. Like, if you imagine how werewolves looked in like old black and white horror films, like basically just a wolf man, that's kind of what a Glabro is, just a bit bulkier, taller, far more intimidating. They being the developers, employ the delirium in here, which that's not how that works. The delirium is only triggered when the individual takes on the Krynos form, which is like the proper werewolf form. Everyone else will just make them feel a bit uncomfortable, I guess. It's like, you know, being tackled by a much burlier, like, hairier, more frightening individual. And especially in that particular scenario where the individual saw, you know, Samira bulk up and like punch them in the face or whatever. That was challenged. Oddly enough, like, I was told off later on for causing a bit of a stir, and I had to take a week off from work just to get out the heat a little bit, which I'm sure is going to tie into the main game where I have more time to investigate like these two ideas, like the divided sept pack thing and this individual who's been killed, which obviously are going to tie round into the main narrative, I'm guessing, rather than focusing on just one particular path. But, you know, we'll just have to see there. So I'm going to assume that this game is going to take place over the course of a week. And all the screenshots that you see on the Steam page, those all happen within the demo. So you don't have too many spoilers there. Apart from the spoilers I've just given you. And the fact that what we experience in-game takes about 12% of the game, which I only know because if you pause the game, you can have like a little progress percentage bar like you did with Heart of the Forest. But yeah, that kind of wraps things up about my thoughts regarding Purgatory. There's a lot of good things there, but there's some really questionable things there. I do hope that I'm wrong about these things, and I hope that this Andre's person is challenged properly by sept leader or elders. And by the way, this happens in the Caern, where there are other Garou around, and you would have thought other elders would have fucking shat on them. But then again, it does adhere to that idea where you can't speak out of station. But then again, fucking pack leader McGee, Andre, dead names them and really spoke out of fucking term. So, consistency. Never heard of her. So I do hope that we get more, like, satisfactory ways of handling that, and elders and whatnot, putting this individual into place. I would love to see what they're going to do with the Worm and Banes, and as I said in my reaction thing, it would be really cool to see what they do with the Black Spiral Dancers, because we haven't really had a great inclusion of them in a World of Darkness video game. You have 2 Black Spiral Dancer bosses in Earthblood, but they are just, like, fucking fodder, I guess, and they're really unsatisfactory. There isn't much to them, so it'll be interesting to see what Different Tales does with their writing to depict the really twisted and fucked up nature of the Black Spiral Dancers are. And as I'm saying this, I'm perhaps thinking that maybe Andre is going to fall into Hogsglog, which is like the fascist endgame state in the 5th edition write-up. But we'll have to see how that's all handled, and I could waffle on for more, but you've all got more important things to do, I'm sure, like checking out the various links in the description below from the various social medias where you can find out all the things I'm getting up to and when every episode goes live. You can also do that by liking and subscribing, so you get all those notifications sent straight to your devices. And whilst you're in the descriptions, check out the various Wyld the Apocalypse books you can purchase to include in your own TTRPG games of the setting, and if you purchase them with those links, I get some of the money back, so I can do more lore dives and do more unusual out of brand things like this, and just continue to provide you awesome fun content, and everybody wins basically. I get more books to provide you more content, and you get more content for free. Wowzers. Also, let me know in the comment section below what you found about the demo, and like the things that you're looking forward to and the things that you're worried about. And tune in tomorrow, the 29th of May 2024, in the Evil Lord Talos, where you'll be able to watch my blind playthrough of the game, so you can able to pick up things if you're unable to play it for whatever reason, or you just want to see what I did. And let me know on that video as well what you think of the whole experience. And until next time, farewell.